Good day, everyone. And today we are going to look at the what we believe are the top 5 digitalization efforts that organizations need to focus on as we exit the pandemic. We will revisit some material from one of our previous webinars in order to set the stage for how we think things will change and what those 5 things with regards to digitalization are. Now, the first thing is I just want to remind everybody that digitalization is really about the fact that software is eating the world. It is that every company's behavior is becoming the behavior of a software company. We think in economic terms around software as a service. We deploy agile-based software technologies. And in essence, therefore, every company behaves like a software company. At the core and at the heart, and we'll talk about this towards the end of the presentation today, we have data, which is the oil of the 21st century. And in order to make that work, analytics and artificial intelligence has become really the combustion engine of society in the 21st century. Now, first, let's very rapidly go through something that we looked at at one of our previous seminars, which is where we stand today with digital transformation. Because in many instances, as we look at digital before COVID-19, there were indications the digital had slowed, the transformation had slowed. And I want to start off with this as the basis of what we will talk about today when we look at then the factors that will accelerate ourselves out of this crisis. First is that data from various sources have actually confirmed that in many instances, the status of this transformation was that very few organizations have in fact been able to call themselves fully transformed from a digital perspective, as you can see on the left-hand side of the chart. And in essence, the majority of organizations are in the midst of that transformation. Now, why is it that it's stalled? Well, part of it is really that we have not gotten out of the pilot phasing of digital, or that we're stalled at scaling, meaning that we've run into challenges with large-scale digital initiatives. And that was very much true at the beginning of 2000. When we look at the specifics of why we have seen that stall, there are a variety of different reasons. Obviously, there are disruptions that happen. There have been cultural challenges as we broaden out the usage of technology within an organization. But there have been a variety of different other things, lack of clarity, lack of alignment to the overall strategy, ineffective design, or even an ineffective strategy for digitalization. And then last but not least, that we have, at least up until the start of this pandemic, been in a war for talent, and therefore resourcing was the issue. So these are some of the reasons that I think we need to take with us as we look at certainly the second half of this year and look at acceleration out of this crisis, is that we need to deal with these issues that we faced before the crisis because they have not gone away. And one of the very important aspects of this is that we need to start to not talk about digital strategy as being separate from the strategy of the organization. And that in fact, we need to deal with digital and the challenges of digital no different than the challenges that we have with overall strategy, which is really in the execution of the strategy. Up to 80% of organizations fail in the execution of strategy, and digital is no different. And therefore, as you look at this year, and certainly the next couple of years, your main focus really needs to be on execution management, how you ensure that you realize what it is your strategy is about, and that your strategy is about digital, but that there is not two different strategies, a corporate strategy and a digital strategy, but only one single strategy for the organization that incorporates digital as the key emphasis of what it is you do as an organization. So the transformation stalled. We've been able to learn from this, but then let's really look at what then happened over the course of the last 12 months. When in essence, the COVID situation that we have been in caused a skewed digital acceleration. We can now go back and conclude that yes, organizations were very successful in a number of different things that were executed rapidly and perhaps with no challenges in front of us would have been much slower implemented. There are three things that I think we have focused on over the course of the last 12 months that certainly has driven an acceleration of digital, but what I believe could be viewed really as a skewed digital. It isn't a real digital strategy. It is a reaction to something that we were forced to do, but now have to retrofit into the architecture of the organization. Now, those three things is first, digital workplace. Second is an acceleration of robotic process automation. And third is digital commerce and service. All these things were accelerated out of necessity. We had to look at re-engineering our workplace, and it therefore caused an acceleration in collaboration technologies and cloud-based technologies. We had to relook at our processes. We need to figure out how certain parts of processes could operate perhaps without human beings as part of a risk assessment strategy. And organizations therefore accelerated deployment of robotic process automation software, even of artificial intelligence that was deployed surgically in terms of making sure that the organization would be able to get through the crisis without necessarily the support of the human tasks that are involved in using technology. And it therefore also led to a surge in no-code or low-code based application environments that allowed a broader number of people to get involved in the development of applications. And our third strand has been the obvious acceleration of digital commerce and service. Without physical locations, many organizations were left with, and that certainly happened in the retail space, a necessity of looking at new ways of marketing and even new ways of selling. Digital selling has revamped the way we think about selling in order to engage with customers and prospects. And of course, therefore, also technologies that will allow us to deliver these, whether therefore logistics updates or improvements to the front end of actually engaging with customers. So in essence, a revamp of certain supply chain automation-based technologies. So these three areas, digital workplace, robotic process automation, and digital commerce and service, was the acceleration that we saw and have seen during COVID-19. But they were not necessarily robustly implemented because we had to rapidly respond. They were not necessarily either implemented in a way that ties it together with, say, the overall strategy of the company. They are certainly platforms that can be developed continuously going forward, but this may now be the time to sit back and perhaps consider what are the things that we need to focus on as an organization. And for that, I believe that there are 5 things that organizations need to now look at by stepping back and reevaluating. First is the digital platforms we use. We have deployed digital initiatives as different islands, but we need to think about this more architecturally. And software is emerging that allows us to think about this from a pure platform perspective. And in fact, for the IT organization to move from thinking like a service deployment to a product thinking organization. Secondly, I will talk about what I call the reversed digital pyramid, the empowerment of employees to, in fact, potentially drive the next generation of digital acceleration. We need to think about data and AI towards the edge of the architecture. We need to think about how do we go from data at the center of core internal processes to the business being data, to the business being driven from a revenue perspective by data. We need to think about different business model changes. The business models are evolving, and we need to plot a path for the organization to think strategically about how it will change over the course of the next couple of years. And the fifth is really to rethink how we look at organization skills and leadership. All these five things interact with each other. They are certainly part of and should be core elements that you consider for your organization as you look at what should digital be about over the course of the next 36 months, even further out, because you need to plot a new path now, as we now are starting to emerge out, as vaccines become available more broadly. Organizations need to think about the acceleration out of this, and these five are the ones that I would recommend that you consider as you move forward. So let's first look at digital platforms, the platform that we use to drive the change going forward. I've looked at this in a very, very simple manner because this is actually a highly complex topic that engages all aspects of your technical architecture. But I really want to start with something else. 5 different dimensions of your business and the systems that you use for that. Now, the 5 different dimensions are your customers, your suppliers, your products and services, your processes, and then data. Data really being at the core of what you do. Over the course of the last 15 years, during what I would deem the first wave of digital transformation, we have deployed systems that engage with our customers, from new selling-based systems, new marketing-based systems, even systems that tie together our customers and our suppliers, systems that integrate our products directly with our customers, such as IoT-based environments. You can look at, for example, car manufacturers, how they have deployed apps to engage with their customers as they drive, or apps to engage with the service points that they may use, how the car itself has become a software platform, how in fact the data repository within a car environment now drives the capabilities that lie within autonomous technologies for cars, how car manufacturers have looked at different ways of their processes, and how in fact the supply chain has gone through a massive revamp. But in all instances when it has done this, it has been a spaghetti code of different systems that we are tying together. And maybe now is the time to go back and think about this really from a digital technology platform perspective. New areas of software, event-driven processing-based environments are emerging, or product-centric digital platforms that allow you to deploy a platform that ties all these elements together in a way that makes you think more architecturally about what you are doing digitally. And so the first thing you now need to do is you need to step back from what we have done the last 12 months, which is deploying different tactical solutions to solve the problems we've had, and think about this from a platform-based perspective. How do we tie together the environments that we have? How do we provide a digital middleware environment that allows us to think differently about what technology is for the business. And this, I think, will be something that preoccupies the IT organization as the IT organization starts to think like a product organization, which is one of the critical things that will change over the course of the next couple of years. Let's then go to the next thing, which is what I would call employee-created digital transformation. Back in the 1980s, there was a CEO of the Scandinavian airline company called SAS, who talked very much about the moments of truth, the millions of moments of truth that happen when employees engage with customers or suppliers, or with, for that matter of fact, with other employees. Well, if you think about the digital transformation over the course of the last 15 years, it hasn't given our employees the digital tools to enable a creative way of them constructing the digital engagement with customers and suppliers. And so I would encourage us to think differently going forward about what I would call a bottom-up driven digital transformation. It's digital empowerment, it's digital Kaizen, where we in fact could have the employees, the front line of the organization, the first level managers, drive the transformation. And the reason, and perhaps the question you should ask is, but why now? Well, first, we have to understand what has happened over the course of the last 15 years. And that's the true pyramid that you see on the left-hand side of the chart. We have had large, top-down driven digital initiatives. Most of them are very relevant and have in fact driven the transformation and ability to cope with the crisis that we've been through over the last 12 months. But they have been top-down. We have had digital platforms emerge, as we talked about previously. We were talking about data architectures and AI platforms that allow us to drive the transformation. And we've talked a lot about senior leadership driving the digital strategy. That's very indicative today when you look at the public statements that CEOs in Japan make about transformation of their business. Is a significant portion of them will now talk about digital as being core to their strategy. But it is focused on changing the digital infrastructure and have in fact given very little digital innovation to the top. And so I would recommend that we look at turning this pyramid upside down from a perspective of several aspects here. First is, and this has truly been shown in Japan, is the front line, and this is not just the production front line, it's the front line of every organization, can drive tremendous transformation of the business if they are given the ability to do so. And in this case, if we talk about digital empowerment, they need to have the tools so that they can drive the transformation. No different than the transformation that has happened over the course of the last 40 to 50 years in Japanese manufacturing. But what we need to make available to the digital front end are the new tools that are emerging, low code or no code tools, the AI support that allow employees to have support in doing their tasks, intelligent robotic process automation based environments, and then leverage the fact that the front line of organizations tend to be younger and tend therefore to have a better understanding of digital environments. First line managers tend to be younger and therefore have a better understanding of that front line and of the tools that allow for digital transformation. Why not encourage a digital kaizen, a digital empowerment with these tools of the front line and drive the same digital transformation that Japan has seen in its manufacturing environment, but now a complete digital transformation since the tools are emerging to do so. Worth considering as part of certainly a 5-year strategy. Isolated, none of these tools will do this for you. But in combination, these tools plus the level of knowledge of people may actually be enough to drive a digital transformation bottom up using the same principles that we have seen over the course of the last many years within the Japanese manufacturing environment. Our third point is, how do we think strategically about data and AI? What I call data and AI to the edge of the organization. And this is complex. It's complex because it requires us to think a little bit about how we evolve through several phases of change over the course of the next 5, even 10 years. But as we plot our way out now, we have to think about how are we going to plot our way towards what I call a data and AI business environment towards the very end, the 5th level on the right-hand side of the chart. And we do so by thinking about the main things that make out what it is we do from a data perspective today. We need to look at how we evolve our data architecture, our analytics and AI environment, as you see on the left-hand side, our IT organizational competencies, the approach that the business takes to data, how data and AI fits into the business, meaning how is it used in the business? And then, do we really have leaders that understand how to use this? I would suggest that you look at this from a perspective of plotting your strategy, your business strategy, as a strategy that incorporates these 5 stages. Now, we can't go through each of the lines here and each of the columns, but they should be self-explanatory. To be clear, though, the vision of where we are going over the course of the next 10 years is really that we talk about a data architecture that is an ecosystem. It's not just about something that's internal. It's an external, always evolving ecosystem of data. That the environment that analyzes this data is also an ecosystem, that analysis happens in multiple parts and it influences the way that the business is structured. The competencies required within the IT organization to deal with that environment on the right-hand side is really that the IT organization switches view, that it views itself as a business, that it thinks about data and AI from a business perspective. How do I drive revenue? Which is in fact what the business approach will be to data. Data is about driving revenue for the business. Data is, as you can see, the business. In fact, you can't describe any business without describing its data because it is the core of what it is. And that it would be expected of every leader at every level in the organization that they actually understand how to lead using data, how to think strategically about data, and how to think strategically about data science, the way to actually analyze it. Now, we are certainly not there. No business is on the right-hand side, not even Google. But we need to plot ourselves as we look at now exiting, as we look at what is it we think about the next 5 to 10 years. This is exactly that. It is, we need to make data the core of the business as we go forward. Then we get to what and how we think about our business model, because with the emergence now and the robustness of digital platforms, of how we think about data, how we look at perhaps engaging the organization in the digital transformation, we can now step back and think differently about what our business model is. And I've spent a number of years thinking about business models and how you depict this in a simple manner, because it's not that easy, actually. And in particular, how you integrate what you do with the technology that you're using. But I would encourage you to look at this chart as being a way of plotting your strategy the next number of years. Highly likely does illustrate your thinking, but it is also important that we make this thinking simple enough that we can communicate this to the rest of the organization. So if you start on the left-hand side and we look at what our digital business model is, well, our starting point really is that your organization, whether a private business or even a public sector entity, exists in the form of a set of processes that deliver a set of products and services. Very simply articulated. Your technology platform will support most of those processes and some of those products and services, hence the red dotted line that you see around the boxes. Now, I believe what we will see happening with a digital transformation in all businesses is not a big bang change from one to the other end, but more of an evolution of change. I think many businesses are probably at the second level at this stage. So they have a current set of processes, they have existing products and services, but they have launched new products and or services, some of which are likely more digital in their nature than their existing products and services. Hence, therefore, the difference in what the technology platform covers in the red line. As we now move, what will happen in our third phase is that businesses will look at an increase in new product and services, perhaps therefore a decrease in older product and services as we transition our product platforms. But we will also start to engage in redesigning our processes, so new processes will be added to current processes. The fourth phase, and now I presume this becomes self-explanatory, is we will not only start to have the phases and environments that we see in the third phase, but also have an added set of more externally collaborative ecosystem products and services, meaning we're not just building our own, we're building products together with perhaps our extended supply chain, perhaps with other competitors, where we are offering new ways of looking at products and services that support our business. And so the vision, the digital business model vision, is really one, and I believe this is a realistic one, because it shrinks the existing product and services in the middle, as you can see. They may still be there 10 years from now. Remember that companies that manufacture trains, there are not that many in the world, but the ones that do actually have to keep the ability to produce spare parts for 35 years as a part of regulatory requirements in many places around the world. So existing products and services in some businesses will be there for a very, very long time. But as you can see, the world will evolve around a technology platform that covers everything that we do. and that even our existing product and services will, in the future, be tied to that architecture. That's what we're building from a vision perspective going forward. And then our last and fifth area of focus is what I believe would be looking differently at our organization, at the skills we have, and at our leadership. And there we can probably learn from the things that didn't work well before COVID started. From an organization perspective, we know that we have to look at the design of our organization differently, include different functions inside teams. This is what we have learned from scaling agile inside large businesses. We have also learned that we need to be able to balance working virtually with working on site. That will not go away. It's very clear that many of us would love to come back to the office for a day or two, but it is also clear that the capability of balancing this means that we have to think differently about our workplace environment. We also know that we can do different things with regards to engaging with customers or prospects, both from a marketing perspective, from a selling perspective. We need to re-engineer the way we sell. It has been proven that we do not always need to sit in front of prospects, and that in fact, the digital challenges that we have faced over the last 12 months have meant that prospects probably, when they reach out and engage with us, are more knowledgeable about our company because they have educated themselves, especially with products and services where the company has spent time making material available about what they do. And then we need to create an organization that is a data-first organization. It is an organization that thinks about data and analytics being both the oil and the combustion engine for the society that we are moving into. On the skills part, we need to think about how we acquire pervasive technology competencies faster than the younger generation entering the workforce, because that will be too slow for us. We need to think about pervasiveness of data and AI capabilities. If we are to realize a digital revolution from the bottom up, we need citizen developer capabilities. We need not just the tools, but also the capabilities to be able to design things using those tools among a broader base of individuals in the company. And then the world has definitely proven that inclusion and diversity is a competency, is a important requirement as we move into the 21st century, especially if we want to attract a more diverse environment. It is important that we have that reflected in our skills broadly across the organization. And then leadership, and we've talked about this in one of these earlier seminars, is we need to look at this from both a hard, soft skill perspective. There are different new leadership skills there. We need to look about enabling the digital empowerment and inclusiveness, and we need leaders that can show empathy as we go forward. This therefore leads me to the end, which is 3 very simple recommendations for you. Learn from the mistakes of the first wave of digitalization, as we saw in the beginning here. Then focus on the 5 digital focus areas that I talked about and incorporate this into the new corporate strategy that you're developing as we exit the COVID challenges that we've had. And to succeed, you will require leadership skills that can help make technology part of the second wave of digitalization across the organization. With that, I hope you will be successful. May the digital force be with you in whatever you do.